Joining us today for a conversation around business process management and automation in the legal industry. Our focus today is going to be on a recent initiative by the firm that most of you know, Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, to improve, among other things, its new matter intake process. The bulk of our time today will be spent listening to Chad Ergen, Director of Business Intelligence and Practice Systems for Gibson Dunn. So before we hear from Chad, we're going to take just a few minutes to identify some trends that we're all contending with in legal. We're going to talk briefly about the impact those trends are having on our business, and then we're going to reference some of the processes, and that list is growing every day, that many law firms, including Gibson, are beginning to automate. We're just going to spend a few minutes on those points, and then we're going to hand the controls over to Chad, and he'll run the preponderance of our call and talk everybody through the real-world example. I do want to call out that although we've got a pretty darn large number of folks on the call today, and because of that you're all on mute, we do want and expect this to be an interactive session. So for those of you that aren't familiar with GoToWebinar, if you look to the right, you should hopefully see a questions tab. We're going to reserve no less than 15, probably closer to 20-25 minutes for questions and answers. But I would say as Chad goes through his conversation, if questions pop up, certainly submit those, and depending on how we're doing on time, Chad, I may just interrupt you and pose those questions. But at the end of the day, most of you are not here to listen to me blather. You're here to listen to Chad and ask some questions and get some feedback, so please don't be shy about asking those questions. So quick introductions. I mentioned Chad's name, and we're lucky to have him here. He is a long-time legal technologist with the bulk of his time in the Am Law 100. He's very active with industry groups like ILTA and others, and spends every day trying to solve the challenges that law firms face on a day-to-day business. I'm Dave Wilner. I run K2's North American business. So most of my work today is on the technology side, but I am a recovering litigator, and every 3 years scramble to get my CLE credits, just like many of you. So I'm certainly familiar with and spend a lot of time with our clients in legal. So many of you have been in legal as lawyers, as paralegals, as technologists, or business folks for decades. Some of you are much newer to the field, and frankly, regardless of which camp you fall into, I'm sure you'll agree that our world has changed dramatically over the last few years for a variety of reasons. So the proliferation over the last 13, 14 years of e-discovery has raised a whole new suite of issues for us as legal professionals to contend with in terms of critical processes, legal hold in particular, and the criticality of managing that process and automating it to the degree possible has taken on huge importance for us and continues to receive significant process attention. Legal process outsourcing and what we're continuing to hear called hyper-specialization, where the farming of certain components of our work gets made to different entities or folks around the world, and we have to figure out how to cleanly have handoffs and task assignments is another critical issue for us. We as an industry, we love our paper. I think the days of us having partners ask us to print out their emails and put it in folders on their desk, I think is winding down, but the move to eco-conscious practices has been, I think, and continues to be a challenge for us, as has the need to then increasingly run our practices virtually. And finally, alternative billing models. The proliferation of fixed fee billing and other alternatives that makes it much, much more difficult for us to titrate the time we spend on a case with how we get paid, makes it more important than ever that we run our practices efficiently. If we don't do it, it means we lose money. So game has absolutely changed for us. Michelle, if you can toggle forward for me. For some reason, my GoToWebinar is giving me some grief on my controls. There we go. Thanks so much. So the impact of that is pretty predictable, right? Our IT departments, which have typically been fairly understaffed in a segment that is not known for having the most tech-savvy users, faces more pressure than you could argue ever before. And adding to that pain is the merger frenzy that we've seen over the last 10 years, where any legacy system challenges that we had previously have become exponentially worse. Our knowledge management personnel face the same challenges with the business systems they are trying to integrate, often dealing with requirements of duplicate data entry because they simply can't pull together all the systems. And at a time when our lawyers and our paralegals need to be more efficient than ever, they have a decreasing ability to do so, managing their workflow across all of these different systems. So the results of that is we are seeing clients looking for more and more opportunities to automate what began as kind of the most common processes, legal hold, billing, maybe maintaining CLE certification tracking, has now blown up to dozens of different processes that folks are looking to automate. And in nearly all of these situations, the firms are looking to leverage the business systems they already have. Let me repeat that. Leverage the business systems they already have. They're not looking to throw out 13 different systems and create one massive repository. They're looking for systems or technologies that can talk to the systems they have and allow them to build processes over the top of that data. And it's not just a couple of early adopters. Numerous firms are doing this more and more today, firms of all shapes and sizes of all practice areas. And we expect that to continue as our industry continues to adapt very, very quickly. So at this point, as promised, I'm going to ask Chad to take the reins and take us through a real-world example of what Gibson has gone through over the last 9 to 12 months and share on a practical level what that's looked like for his team. He'll give you some before, some during, and some after. And again, I'm going to keep an eye on the questions, so please don't be shy about submitting those. But Chad, take it away.
Thanks, Dave. Let's see if the controls work. Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you all for joining the webinar today. We're going to go through what we've been doing for the last 3 years. I joined the firm about 3 years ago, and since I joined, what we've done is just we looked into pain points, the areas that we have lots of manual administrative work being done, non-billable work being done, that the utilization of individuals are not that great because of paper-based or manual-based processes. So we looked into project management office, PMO. We looked into other areas where we interview the lateral hires, we interview new employees, we looked into financial systems, marketing, HR, and we came up with a list of areas that can use BPM, business process, re-engineering business process management solutions. This is one area I think that we've been working on for the last couple of years that got management's attention, especially during the economic downturn. When the firms are under financial tight, guidelines, and when we're exposed to changing requirements coming from the clients, they want to have, more work done at a lower rate, better utilization of attorneys and administrative staff, and some of the new billing guidelines as evolving, changing. They're preventing non-billable work, non-attorney work to be built at any rate. So when we look into administrative overcosts, where we used to bill the clients for every single fax page that's sent to client, I mean, of course that got changed, that got replaced by email, and you cannot bill the clients for email communications, and somehow the secretarial time that's spent supporting the attorneys cannot be, of course, billed because that's administrative support. And we've been seeing this perfect storm, where the economic downturn combined with the increased demand coming from the clients, evolving our legal market. And that's putting lots of pressure on legal technology, because at the end, many people are seeing technology as the saving element as the life jacket that will help us in many ways, which I do truly believe. So we looked at different things, and we said, well, you know what we can do? We can build a full-scale medical lifecycle management. We can actually do the onboarding for new employees. We can do the onboarding for new projects. I mean, I'm not sure how many of you are going through some of these questions or risks or issues or pain points. Is that when you have somebody saying, hey, I need to have a new project done, and you need to be able to capture that and send it over to someone in your team and streamline the project intake process. That could be extended to support centers, trainers, any of the other support staff in your organizations. Same thing applies to new matters. When you have a new client onboarding, they come with a new matter. If you have an existing client, they want to open a new matter, that is a different kind of course, workflow. When you have a new employee joining the firm, either a lateral hire, a summer associate coming back for fall, regardless of the type of the individual administrative staff, at the end of the day, you need to streamline the process, because we found out that there are some studies done that somewhere around 40 to 45% of the individuals who leave the firm, who leave the company within the first 12 months, related to their poor onboarding experience. Same thing applies to, of course, the clients. When you do the onboarding for a client, if things get really complicated, clients will have a really bad aftertaste, and they're going to be less inclined to work with you going forward. When you combine these things with the internal processes, such as like the financial systems, when somebody says, hey, here's my expense, there are systems out there that will allow you to take the image of your receipts and submit it as part of your expense reporting, check requests going out to your finance department, purchase order requests, vacation requests. Any of these could be actually identified as business process reengineering. But I think the real driving force behind it is the changing market. There's, as Dave mentioned, there's a handful of changes coming down. I'm not sure if you guys follow, but I think Tom Mullen did a really good study at MIT about hyper-specialization, how cheap communications and technology is driving hyper-specialization within any kind of company, not only law firms, but Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. Everybody's looking at the bottom numbers. They're looking into ways to cut the corners, make the organizations more agile, more reactive rather than proactive rather than reactive. So if you have a large organization with thousands of users, it's hard to steer that ship. When you're at the stern and try to move left and right, you need to have an agile environment that will respond quickly. And I think that's where we see a great opportunity with new matter intake. So we looked into that as a low-hanging fruit, right? It has a huge impact because it touches financials, conflicts, records, new business group, IS, IT, marketing, finance. It touches at least 7 or 8 administrative departments, as well as the clients and the attorneys, our timekeepers. So we looked into this, and I think what we've done is just we sat down and we realized that this is a major pain point for many different entities at the firm. We compare the new intake to new employee onboarding workflows, and we realized that from conceptual perspective, they're actually very close to each other. In one, you're doing the onboarding for a client. On the other one, you're doing an onboarding for a potential employee. So at the end, they are very similar. They just change. So we decided to start with the new matter intake and continue with the new employee onboarding. What we realized is that there are different steps in the matter intake process, and each one of them has their own pain point. So we spent some time and going through each part of the entity, and we sat down with the conflicts group. We wrote down their pain points, we wrote down their processes, we wrote down everything that they've done, and repeat the same thing with the other groups. Then we looked into options. We said, wow, this is great. So we have this fantastic project that's going to change the way we work internally. It's going to make our attorneys much more effective, our administrative support staff better utilized, and it's going to turn things around, reduce the time it takes to open a new matter. So then we looked into other options. We said, well, you know what, this is something actually we can build in-house. It's a really low cost. We're going to use our internal developers, probably 2 .NET Visual Basic programmers. But then we looked into new matter intake. We said, well, it could take somewhere around 9 to 12 months to build this thing in-house. And, I mean, underlying codes we're talking about is a workflow product. Or we can go by a workflow product and start building on top of that foundation. So when we realized that option 1 is out of question, because when you're done with the new matter intake, then you have to transfer that knowledge to your new employee onboarding. Then you have to do the same thing for vacation requests, PTO requests. You have to do the same thing for the checks, expense requests. There's no end. So we realized that overall, what we needed is a workflow foundation solution, not something one-off solution. And for those on the phone, if you are interested in taking this, interesting adventure, starting something like that, I would strongly suggest that don't do it if you only have one solution that comes to your mind. If I ask the question within the next 10 seconds, if you can only come up with a single solution, you may not be ready for, business process re-engineering or a workflow solution. So then we looked into Metastorm, one of the other workflow products we found in the market, and we've been using it for other systems. And as you may know, Metastorm has built-in modules in some of the other legal-based solutions, and we realized that there's not much advantage of using Metastorm because the steep learning curve at the end is what we're trying to avoid. We don't want to. It's very hard to get qualified programmers, qualified individuals who know how to program and work with Metastorm. The knowledge base is limited. I'm not going to say anything about the vendor, but overall, our concern was that we're not going to be able to do this thing in-house. If we work with a Metastorm, which means that we have to go hire a consulting company, and then after buying the product or work directly with the vendors or their partners to build each single solution we have. And this is not the approach we want to take. We're looking for, like I said, a long-term solution. It's just whatever it is to attorneys, Word product, this will be same for us for BPM. So it's at the end, it's a tool and platform. So then we looked into SharePoint workflow. We said, well, it's free. If you guys have SharePoint environments, Workflow Foundation started this with 2013, 2010, 2007, all those different versions of SharePoint. You have the Workflow Foundation. Why don't we just use that? Well, it all came down to the fact that it's free, but it's still going to require internal resources to build the pieces, build the blocks, where we can actually get those blocks directly from a product like K2. And then we also realized that when we start testing it, there are significant technical and design limitations. My father used to say, I'm not rich enough to get free products or cheap products. We came to that to realize that the solution that our dear friends at Microsoft offered us wasn't really a full-scale solution that's enterprise that can be used enterprise-wide or firm-wide. So then we decided to, of course, go after reviewing. This took us about somewhere around 3 months to look into different options before we pulled the trigger and start with the K2. So then we looked into K2 and so we said, you know what? It's really flexible. It has all the small pieces that we're looking for. It's a modular system. It's the user interface is really, really friendly. You can even have some of your power users start building the workflows. I know some of you thinking, are you out of your mind? But to be frank, at a certain point, there are simple workflows that can be managed by your power users at the end. You're also capable of training the your own internal staff as part of the K2 engagement, and I think that's one decision probably we'll talk about at the end. That one decision I think we made was besides purchasing K2, was that we also get their training package so that we're able to train our internal staff, both power users and the programmers, how to use the product. That gave us really that gave us a boost to jumpstart and start building our own workflows. We want to also measure the KPIs. We want to see what stage of the workflow we're failing. Because when you think about employee onboarding or new matter or client onboarding, or what I call new business intake, when you talk about new business intake, you need to be able to fine-tune your system. If you take your existing workflow that you have today, manual workflow, and try to throw technology on top of it and try to throw K2 on top of it, you're going to fail. Because during this whole process, we're going to talk about a couple of slides later, but during this whole process, the most important piece, try to understand what is it that you're trying to do, what is it that you're trying to accomplish, and basically focus on that target, locked on that target, and then don't take the easy way out, which is many people will say, hey, I just got this cool tool, it's a workflow solution, let me take this complicated manual email-based or Microsoft Word or Outlook form-based workflow. Let me automate it. If you try to do that, I am almost 100% sure that you're going to fail. And the reason behind it is that you're trying to not automate an existing manual process. You're trying to do business process management, business process re-engineering. And the term re-engineering, sometimes reverse engineering, comes down to the fact that you need to understand the process first. You need to know the business before you can use the tool and enable it, which means that you're going to spend lots of time with HR folks, with finance folks, with the secretarial services, with any of the other administrative staff that will help you build this solution. We also looked into what's the total cost of ownership. It's hard to get ROI for a platform that will enable you to do business process re-engineering or a workflow, because there's no direct link between the investment you're making and the time you're saving. In some cases, there might be something, I'm sure some of you going like, well, I can do that. I'm sure you can pull up some numbers, but how do you, if you're replacing an existing manual process with automated workflow, it's probably easier to say, hey, we started at X and we ended at 2 days later. That'll give us 48 hours of manual process. When we put K2, it comes down to 12. So you can measure those end to end, but it's very hard to link your investment to the better utilization of your administrative staff. So then I'm going to show you some of the design experience that we had to go through. This is sample one that, basically want to show you how simple it is that you can take actually one of these user tasks and you can identify and build a business workflow. And that's one thing that's our number one requirement. Before we give anything to our programmers, we sit down with the business units, we build a workflow that's easily understandable to them so that they can see the process, they can make corrections, and they can come back to us and say, oh, this is what we're looking for. And that's critical, because you don't want to build a workflow and realize that you build something wrong, and you have to come back and fix it again, go back again. So I think sitting down and going through the requirements was critical. Then we looked into our systems. We said, you know what, rule number one, well, I'll say rule number two with the workflows is to be able to connect to your existing silos. If you have a workflow solution that is a standalone, you're creating another repository, you're creating another isolated silo, and we're trying to avoid that. So if your HR system is running on Oracle, if your database systems are running on SQL, and you have an Exchange, then you're using some kind of CRM solution, SharePoint on top, combined with the Active Directory, you're using Salesforce or some kind of cloud-based solution, you need to be able to combine these out-of-box points and silos and try to use your workflow to push and pull data. Because one thing we're trying to prevent here, redundant data entry. And that's one of the biggest benefits that you can see in some of the workflows that you build. That cuts your time. If you have someone, a secretary, filling out a new matter intake form, then it goes to someone in conflicts check and the records. If everybody keep entering that data, that defeats the whole purpose of automating the workflow. Then we looked into, I'll show you some of the validation rules that you can put into place, because in order to move into the next stage in the workflow, if it's an expense claim like this one or whatever it is, you're capable of now controlling what's needed from that user population. If you make everything optional, as we all know that the timekeepers or the administrative staff, they're not going to have time or attention to fill out stuff that's optional. They're going to only fill out the ones that are required and probably leave the rest empty. So now you're in charge of making those fields, you're in control of making those fields required. You can see, you can put rules in place where they cannot go to the next stage of the workflow without that being completed. You can also have a portal showing about the different stages of your workflow. When is it done? Who's next in the process? This is a full-scale process management if you look at it from that perspective. Something like this could be also given to third parties within your organization. Like if you're working with a vendor, you can give them a vendor portal where they can see the stages of, or the other way around. You can also share this with your HR group for onboarding. You can share this with your finance group for new business intake, records department. Many different groups could have their own portal so that they can not only see the progress, they can also get some kind of reporting out of the system. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to go back and say, this is how much time we spent, and look at the areas that we're failing. You can put certain SLAs in place. You can just say, look, when we do the new matter intake, we don't want conflicts. We want conflicts to not to exceed X amount of hours. Or we would like to do a response from record center within X number of hours. So you can put those in place. And when these SLAs are broken, when these SLAs are exceeded or breached, then you'll get notification and it goes into your records, it goes into your reports. So at the end of the month, quarter, half years, or at the end of the year, you can run reports and say, where are the areas that we need maybe more people, maybe we need more workforce, or maybe we need to redirect people to focus other areas. I think this is one of the hidden values of using a tool like that, because you are measuring your progress. You're measuring each stage of your development and your effort. Well, we also looked into administration because we want to have someone to oversee that area. And the other part we have is scaling for future expansions. You can start with something simple. It can be something as simple as vacation request. Well, there are different kinds of PTO requests besides the vacation. Then you may want to add more types. You can start with onboarding for partners. Then your onboarding workflow could be modified and scaled to address your associates or administrative staff, secretaries, paralegals, all those different kind of employees and their onboarding needs. And as you can see on the left, this is a technical diagram of what the product produces. When you build the workflow on the back, you can actually take a look at this process and share with the stakeholders in your project and say, look, this is what we've been doing. This is the actual workflow of the process. So what we've done is that we brought the product, we got the on-site training with the K2 training team. Took about 3 days of training. We train our programmers, but then for this project, I assigned only a single Visual Studio, Visual Basic .NET programmer, and we have one application analyst whose job is to keep track of all the requirements, pain points, We have an extensive system of collecting all that information, and then what we've done is just we start going through these requirements. I think for us, the most complicated piece was to get down to the details and find out what the folks in trenches are going through every single day. Because most of the time, nobody, approached them directly about these pain points. Sometimes, you see they are surprised by this kind of approach, and when you start talking about their requirements, they are, I would say, most of them, so probably all of them, were relieved because they've been suffering through these inconsistent, redundant entries and many other pain points. So we spent 6 months basically writing down every single requirement, their current model. We spent about 1 month for design piece. That's the programmer side. We gave them the business, we gave them the business workflow, and we gave them the requirements and said this is what we need to do. Of course, we did the reiterative design, agile development cycle, so we did use that method. So we built a module, we went to the business unit owner for that, came back and we said, okay, so conflict check wants to do this, and then we go to records, we do the same thing, come back, we go to finance, come back. So we start building different modules. And throughout this whole system, of course, we start reading data and writing back to data from different systems. And main component of this overall system was our data warehouse. And I know some of you probably, depending on your size and company, you directly write or read from the live source. And I think what I suggest is to, instead of going after the direct source, go after essential data source. It could be a warehouse, it could be data mart, 7-Eleven, however you want to call it. You need an essential source to be able to read and write data directly. So then we looked into this, we built this workflow. We said, okay, so it starts here. Are there any exceptions? Do we need a request conflict check? Do we need to go after the new client requirements? Are there any kind of guidelines in place? And then it goes through the whole workflow. This is, by the way, that once you build a workflow, this is what the system produces. You don't have to directly build that. And we built the input forms. I think this is the one that replace the either the Outlook-based forms or Microsoft Word-based forms, where you can actually start with this. There are four or five different pages that goes through. We tried to make this thing simple. We found out that people do not have much attention if they need to scroll. The top of the screen is your most valuable area. And we have some secretaries or individuals that are visually impaired, so we didn't want to give them a hard time by reducing the font sizes. We make them visible, single page, but different steps. So they click, they continue, they fill out this, they click on continue, it goes to the next page, and so on, and it goes through different stages of the intake form. And some of the stages, like for example, when you're doing a client intake, your client, based on their legal name, you might have that information somewhere in your Salesforce system or your CRM system that you can actually directly pull that information instead of entering. At that point, your administrative support staff's responsibility comes down to confirming the address visually instead of typing the address. That may not be too much of a saving, but that's a couple of minutes of time totally saved. Then it goes through these 4 different steps, and at the end it sends different notifications out to different groups. It does ask different individuals within each group to respond to an action via email. So the conflict group receive an email, they click on it, they have to complete their part, and the system stays in the back and starts measuring. When they click on it, what they have done, and because based on your workflow, if you look at the chart earlier, based on your visual workflow, there might be stages where you have either a parallel or serial task that needs to be done. If you have a new employee come in, you set up their username and account, it could be done by IT, while your finance folks could assign their vendor ID or employee accounts for direct deposits. So those things sometimes could be done in parallel fashion, where the other workflow stages that needs to be done serial, meaning that you need to wait the previous task to be completed to move to the next one. And I think we got really good results. We realized that there is a significant improvement overall utilization of the team involved in the new business intake process. We also found out that you can actually directly help the firm better streamline our matter life cycle, because as you know, if you're a law firm, your matter starts with the pitch process, probably that's the pre-intake, then it goes into intake, new business intake, then it goes into work in progress, then it goes into closing. And that cycle with opening, pitch, opening, work, and closing, they all push data into your central data source. And we found out that by using this, workflow, new business intake, we are actually getting some byproducts, some, additional benefits from different systems as well. What have we learned? Well, we learned one thing, that you need to start with a high-impact, low-hanging fruit. It's especially with the law firms, during the economic downturn, it's very hard to justify your purchase of a workflow product, because it's unlike any other products that we use. There is not a direct project that that the product, a workflow product, could be mapped to, linked to. So you cannot just say, hey, I'm going to go buy this word processing product, and they'll say, oh, why do you need it? Well, because of our attorney is doing some work product and we need that tool. You buy it, you're done with it. With a product like K2, you buy it once and you use it in many, many projects. But if you, think about yourself going up to the management and during the budget cycle, try to justify a product, a workflow product that does 200 different projects. My suggestion will be, instead of submitting multiple projects for justification purposes, pick one or two that are most painful. And you're going to be able to, of course, make the case much easier by going after that high-impact, low-hanging fruit. For me, you have to measure 10 times before you cut. I know we are all, especially in your technology, IT background, we all are technology trigger happy. We buy a product we like. What we want to do is forget about the requirements, forget about this paperwork. I don't care about project management office. I don't care about any of those. I want this product and I want to start building it now. That doesn't work with a product like K2. You need to be able to understand the business, because keep in mind, what you're trying to resolve is a process. You're trying to make a process much more effective by putting a workflow foundation on top. So that's incredible. That's very important for everyone, I believe. So. And then the other thing we talked about is just do not try to automate. Do not try to throw the technology like K2 on top of an existing manual process, because you're going to fail. There's a reason why manual process is done manually, because it requires lots of personnel, it requires lots of administrative and support staff. What we're trying to do, reduce that. If you try to automate the existing process with K2, you're not going to be able to get the benefit best, out of the, the investment out of your systems. So my suggestion is that, first of all, write down and build a visual is everything, especially with the upper management. Build a Visio diagram or PowerPoint diagram showing a high-level overview of your manual process. Then start talking to individuals and try to get their experience. talk to those folks that are in trenches dealing with this manual process every day, better understand how you can cut the corners, come back and present a revised version of your business process. Then build it based on that revised version. Do not build it based on the initial model that you captured during the requirements phase. And you need to focus, like I said, goal and business need. You need to keep an eye on the business, not the technology itself, otherwise you're going to fail. Like I mentioned, another point quickly is that if you want the best out of the K2 system, you must get the full training. Do not depend on the manuals or videos or other things. You need to have the training so that you can better understand the technology. It's incredibly powerful solution, but you're not going to be able to use 100% of the product if you don't know the product itself and what it can do for you. Another suggestion I have is you need to check your help desk. Check your support center. Take a look at the tickets that coming in from attorneys, because most of the times those tickets are handled by your level 1 support center folks. Never reach out to you and grab your attention. But when you look at those tickets, you may just realize you can see some trend. You can realize, maybe you realize that there are so many questions coming in about, adding printers. Or there are so many questions coming in about problems with any of these systems. It could be something around complications. When you look at the support center help desk tickets, you can find those pain points and come up with the solutions that will better address the environment and your approach with the workflow. So what's next for us? The next step for us is full-scale legal project management. We want to bring it for our transactional lawyers. We want to bring the LPM for our e-discovery litigation support folks. We want to, follow the EDRM model and build something, which we started that grabs your incoming e-discovery request. Since I oversee practice systems as well, this is one of my goals this year, to be able to do the same thing, but do it on the e-discovery level, follow the different paths of that litigation case, and better serve our clients and our internal folks, and better work with the vendors, because when you are working in a large case, there are many people involved. Sometimes you don't get to interact with so many people on the transactional side, but with litigation you have vendors, you have internal folks, you have external vendors, internal litigation support team, you have attorneys, you have co-counsel, opposing counsel. There are so many different parties. I think you can use a workflow product like K2. Practice applications, we have a new model to do closing sets. When the transactional attorneys complete their matter, their deal, they actually, instead of submitting their closing sets to records management and one copy goes to the client, we have now a workflow solution that sends the collection to our records management system, uploads to our client extranets, so the clients, instead of, in addition to some cases, getting DVDs or the closing binders, they're now seeing it online. They can search the closing set and they can access it anytime. So these are some of the next. We also have client matter health checks. If you're engaged in a client and you want to find out if your client or the case you're working on, opposing counsel, co-counsel, any of these are mentioned in any of the, blogs, Twitters, any kind of social media sites. Now we're capable of monitoring those and getting advance notice about what's happening, the internet chatter. And it comes from multiple sources and grabs and then sends a notification if there's a certain alert, like if your client missed a payment, or if their credit ranking has changed, you're going to be able to see the early notifications about those. So I think we only have probably 15 minutes left, Dave. If there are any questions.
Me too. We've got some. Yeah, we've got a few questions for you, and for others, I'd remind you to submit those to the right, and I'll go ahead and read those to Chad. So that the first one is why did you start with new matter intake as opposed to something like, what does she say, HR or something finance related?
Well, we realized that with finance or HR, the impact is directly internal. With the new business intake, the impact is both internal and external. We realized that we could actually save some time and better serve our clients while we're making our attorneys much more effective, better utilize administrative staff. All those are the reasons why we decided to start with the MBI. And also pain points. If you take a pain point measure scale and ask yourself what are the areas that needs the solution like this one, the answer for us was MBI. It might be something else for your organization, and that's, I think, where you need to sit down and connect with the business unit. You cannot sit in your office as a technology person, assume that you know everything about the business. Once you understand the business, once you make the connection with different units, you can find out their pain points, you can understand better their processes, so that you can use a solution like that.
Got it. Next question. How are you able to justify to management buying a workflow product given that it's a platform and not something shrink-wrapped?
I'm sorry, say again? Can you repeat?
Yeah, the question is, how did you justify, you say justify, I assume that they mean the spend, but how do you justify, did you justify to management a workflow product purchase, given that it's not a shrink-wrap product?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall with the law firms, it's hard to, come up with a generic, product and try to get approval. If you go to management and say, hey, I found a workflow solution, they might just say, what is a workflow? So you need to find your right angle based on your culture, your organization, and the past experience. I mean, with us, what it works is that we grab the most important, low-hanging fruit, high-impact solution, and we submit it as a project itself. And we told the management, we need to get a product like a workflow product like K2 that can address the problem we're having here. Here is the probably potentially number of hours or time we can save. Oh, by the way, the same product could be used for new employee onboarding. It could be used for check requests. It could be used for purchase order requests, as well as PTO. And then you get the buy-in in the room from head of HR, head of finance, head of different units, head of marketing. They all nod their head and they said, okay, yeah, I can use that piece. And I think that was our general approach. Try to lobby the product first, a bit of lobbying, and try to sell it before it reaches that point where management have to approve as part of your budget.
Got it. A couple questions on time and billing systems, and I'll leave it to you, Chad, and how much you want to share here. But a couple folks have asked what time and billing systems the firm is using, and if those current systems offer a workflow application, or if you're building or built something to tap into those.
We're using Aderant CMS, but in the past I worked with Elite System as well, doing the similar kind of solutions. Yes, we are tying into their own workflow, but just want to clear one point. I heard from some of the colleagues, they're saying, hey, we already bought this XYZ, whatever the product is, it comes with a workflow. Just don't fall into that trap. If a product comes with a built-in workflow from one of the other vendors, there's a chance that your license agreement is not going to allow you to use that, canned version of the work product for other purposes. So we actually, I had that question before, but yes, the idea is that if you have an existing product that has the workflow, you can easily tie it into yours. And then for that, I would suggest to go through a central data source rather than directly hitting your live data.
Got it. Next question, looks like it needs some clarification, is when you purchased K2, did you already have the data warehouse built, or did you do it afterwards?
That's a great question. We had the data warehouse built when I walked into the firm. That's one of my number one projects. In today's environment, we're talking about terms that we keep hearing, big data. Data is growing. We cannot directly hit our financial systems, HR systems, and you need to normalize the data, you need to standardize the data. You want to make sure that even your jurisdiction codes, even your address structure, even your states, industry codes, all those things have to be standardized. And the best way of doing it is just if marketing is using one set of keywords and your financial system using another set, and HR is another one, when you have K2, which one is authoritative source? You need to define, you need to look at your data dictionary, you need to take a look at your warehouse, and you need to define which one is the owner for an email address. In your organization, is the email address owned by Active Directory? Is it owned by HR? Does IT own it? So you have to ask yourself those questions and mark which one of those things that you're trying to build within your workflow has ownership, which one is accountability, because in today's environment, many systems use redundant fields. Address is another example. You can have a client whose headquarters is in UK, but you're working with its subsidiary in New York. So what do you use when you open the new client intake? Do you use their billing address? Do you use their shipping address, mailing address? What do you use? Do you use their headquarters address? There are so many complications. The best way to resolve these is to make sure that your data is centralized in a location where you can easily tap in and bring that, extract the data, use it. By the way, when you're done, you're not done, really. You need to push back some of that updates. Think about this, a secretary entering or attorney entering the new client details. Your client that you pull, your previous client that you pull from your Salesforce application or your internal CRM application, interaction or whatever you have, the address may be outdated. So by updating it in the intake process, you're now pushing your fresh address, the updates, to your other systems and saying, look, what you have in your system is incorrect. Here's the most recent entity.
Got it. Thanks, Chad. Looks like there's two more questions here. The first one, I'll give them to you together, is what size firm would you recommend use this? When they say use this, I'm not sure if they mean take this approach, or but maybe you can speak to the differences you see between larger firms and smaller with this kind of technology. And then I got looks like one last one after that.
I don't think when it comes down to a workflow, business process reengineering, size matters. And the reason behind it is just I think every size of organization could use, and especially today's economy and financial downturn and stress, everybody could use a bit more utilized approach. The jobs that they were lost last 5-6 years, some of them are never ever going to come back. Because what's happening just internally, we've been absorbing those jobs that are not being replaced, and that's being divided to different entities or units within the organization, which increase the utilization of every individual, at the firm or the company. So now you need to find a better way to give them some relief. You can't expect, your administrative support staff keep doing their job with less, manpower. With no automation. That's where the hyper-specialization, the request coming from the clients, the pressure coming from different entities, this is where everything, the perfect storm comes in. This is the perfect time, I think, any kind of organization start looking into business process reengineering and come up with a solution that has a built-in workflow foundation.
Last question here. Well, I'm getting an error message. Can you hear me, Chad?
I can hear you.
Good, good. Last question looks like it's a combo. It's what was your biggest learning, or what would be one thing you would have done differently?
Well, we learned that going through the requirements and spanning, and many people ask that because when you engage a large project like this, there are eyes watching. They're monitoring your progress. They keep asking you, hey, is it ready yet? Are we there yet? I'm like, not yet, not yet. And I think business is having a bit of problem understanding how complicated the business and the requirements, understanding the business and requirement phase could be. This is where measuring 10 times and cutting once comes in. You need to be able to understand the business, and that's how we basically learn how complex, because when we start the project, we thought that we were going to be done in 3 months. Because our programmer looked at the initial workflow. He said, oh, yeah, piece of cake. I'll have it next month. And it turns out it's not that easy. The technology is easy. The product is user-friendly. It's very easy to use. 1 month, you can build a extensive workflow. The problem is that it may not be the right solution that business is expecting. So you need to be able to understand the business. If you take a traditional IT guy, put it in charge of that project with no exposure to business line, you sit in your cubicle in your office, start building a workflow, you're already on the wrong track. So you need to be able to go back and talk to the users, talk to the business, and keep showing them your progress, and just say, look, are we on the right track? Yes, no. Do the reiterative design instead of waiting for the last minute and say, release open the curtains. Here's the great product I built, and they say, oh, this is not what we asked you to build. Now your 3 months is wasted.
Measure twice, cut once. I think I remember your slide right in terms of your timeline of the project. The first 6 months was the requirements gathering, and once you had that, it moved really quickly. But that was the piece that you wanted to make sure you got right.
Yeah.
So we're right on the hour. I've had a few folks ask if we've recorded this. We did, and if the deck will be made available, it can. If you're interested, shoot me a quick note. It's probably the easiest way. My email's up there. I suspect, Chad, you hear the passion in Chad's voice. He does this because he enjoys it, and although I'm not clearing this with him first, I suspect that he would welcome hearing from anyone here that wants to talk about it more and learn from the good work that he and his team have done. Chad, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, feel free to contact me. I think the best way, I'm traveling a lot nowadays between different offices since I'm working on the practice and e-discovery area as well, and that work usually comes first because it's exposing and working with the clients. Email will be the best approach. Just drop me a line if you have any questions. We've done this. We looked into 3 major vendors. We spent months before we made the investment and purchased the product. So if you have any kind of questions, give me a buzz and give me a call, or actually, I'm sorry, send me an email. I think that'll be better, and I'll arrange something. We can have a discussion if you have any other questions.
Perfect. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for attending. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you.